a lot of teachers have particular things that they point to, like Angelo points to Eckhart Tolle.
Yes.
One of the things I like about him is he's not just looking to be recognized as a teacher himself. He wants to be a facilitator. I think that's the appropriate way to deal with this. And so, he refers to Eckhart Tolle, Adyashanti, Adyashanti, a Zen teacher. He likes him. He refers to him. But in my case, I can't say that there's one book or one particular teacher or one particular view of the truth that I refer to consistently, or that I think is the Bible for this, or however you want to talk about that stuff. I think that what you want to do is, and what I have done and what I continue to do is, I continue to be open and receptive. I try and maintain this beginner's mind attitude. And then I'm constantly looking to see what's out there and what's new and what's a different way of talking about or looking at these things. And it never fails. There's always something. Every day, somehow, some way, every day, another book, another teacher shows up. Sometimes I check it out. I'm not, it doesn't necessarily attract me too much. And other things, I check it out, it attracts me a lot. I see something unique that I didn't see. But I think over time, what you want to aim for is having enough of a sense of these teachings and practices that you have your own, it's kind of like you have your own body of understanding that is now clear enough and consistent enough with everything you've ever learned or heard that you can count on that more than anything else. I think that's important, that at some point, one way to talk about this is to say at some point it needs to become yours. Not mine, not not Angelo, not Eckhart Tolle. Nobody owns the truth. The truth belongs to all of us. And so at some point, once that becomes evident, then it's no longer a matter of looking for it's kind of like not seeking any further. You're not seeking like you don't know. No, you're not seeking like you don't know. Now you know. You're still very interested and excited about this possibility, and so you're constantly looking for more ways to understand it, for more ways to enjoy it. For example, this week I was where was it? I think it was a Facebook thing where I saw somebody post something wishing Werner Erhard a happy birthday. I think Werner turned 87. Okay, and he has a lot of people all over the world that really see him as a very valuable and important teacher, and including myself. I see him as a very valuable and important teacher. I learned a lot of things from Werner Erhard that weren't available anywhere else, in terms of, he based what he did with Est and his teachings on Zen, which he acknowledges, and yet the way he put Est together and the way he presented it to people was unique. It was based in Zen, but it was unique, and it gave people, it was designed to give people an experience of what Zen is, not necessarily a conceptual understanding. So anyway, I saw somebody posted happy birthday to Werner, and it was this woman, Patricia. And when I looked at her name and I looked at her, a memory popped up that about 25 years ago I was in New York City doing a training, and she was one of the people leading the training. Just popped into my head, and I remembered that I was very impressed by her at that time. So then I clicked on her name and went to her Facebook page. Come to find out, she's developed a teaching and a training based on Zen and based on her work with Werner, and she was one of the main people in Werner's community, Werner's teaching community. And she developed this training in which she claims that she had a relationship with a man, and in that relationship they were able to discover the ability to communicate and relate to one another in such a way that they could experience a mutual consciousness. Now, when I heard that, that got my attention, because one of the things that is a topic in the world is, okay, individual transformation, individual enlightenment has been around for thousands of years. But one of the questions that comes up now even more than ever is there a way that this enlightenment, this consciousness can be spread among humanity sufficiently that enough of us are in this state of consciousness, right, that we can save the world, that we can stop being crazy, that we can start spreading the food around, that we can start spreading the wealth around, that we can save the world in terms of understanding that nationalism has got to stop. We can't go forward, especially now with the internet and the global reality. There is a global reality now of humanity that relates to one another through the internet. So this is in my view, this is something that's coming into existence that the internet represents. What does it represent? It represents the possibility of humanity coming to understand that it is now the time for us to organize ourselves as a global community. That's the way it is now, that we are a global community. And what worked in the past in terms of how we depended on leadership and government and all that in order to, take care of business and feed us and so forth and guide us, that's not working anymore. It's not working anymore. And not only is that not working anymore, but some of the fallout from that condition, from that state of mind, one of which is nuclear warfare, right, is now more threatening than it ever was. The arms race is way out of control, in terms of how many nuclear weapons exist and so forth. So we have that threat to deal with. We have global warming to deal with, right? We have war that is still going on. We have terrorism. We have economic disaster, possible economic disaster to deal with. We have new diseases that are threatening humanity to deal with. And the interesting thing is these financial and these new diseases and these wars are affecting the global community. I don't know whether you noticed or not, but this war that's going on in Ukraine, did you notice that the global community reacted to that? Yes. That's the first time anything like that happened. When Vietnam War and when the other war in Afghanistan, right? The world didn't react to that. But when the Ukraine war occurred, the world community reacted to that. And the world community started to unite against this, this behavior of invasion. So something's happening, something's ebbing, something's, coming into existence now. And so the question, is there a way, is there a practice, is there a teaching that specifically focuses on our being able to deal with our relationship with one another? Whether we're talking about family, whether we're talking about countries, right? Whether we're talking about races, whether we're talking about religions, right? Is there a way of getting out of this conditioned state in which we feel threatened, in which we are still in the fight and flight mode as a human race? Is there a way is there a possible teaching and a possible practice that can have us begin to experience our common consciousness? So this particular woman wrote a book in which she claims she was able to experience this common consciousness with another man, in which they could literally experience each other's consciousness, experience each other's emotions, experience each other's thoughts, and come into a way of relating that was really a unification of their energy, a unification of their consciousness. Well, that caught my attention. So I she had a website. She's got a whole movement going on. This has been going on for a while. I just learned about it, right? It's called the Evolutionary Collective. Evolutionary Collective. And she's promoting the idea that there is a teaching and there is a practice that can help us close the gap in relationship, you know. And if that's true, and if that's possible, I am very up for that. I'm very interested in that, because that could change the world. That could change the future, right? And obviously part of what she says is that she understands that, and that this is something that has shown up in the consciousness that exists now in the world. And so I got a hold of her book and reading her book, and she does training, right, that anybody can participate in. And the first of the trainings that she offers is a free training where it's an online training and you can participate in it. And she will break down the details of this teaching and these practices. So I signed up for that. Right? And that's the way it is. It's kind of, you know, one of the ways that I sense that this works is that if you're truly committed to waking up, if you're truly committed to being an awake human being, that resources will begin to appear in front of you. That's the way it has been for me, and I see that to be the case for other people. But that depends on whether you're committed in an absolute way. If you're committed in an absolute way to this possibility, right, then I can understand how resources would show up for you, because your energy is now intentional. Do you know what I mean? Your consciousness and your energy is now intending to be awake. And because that's the case, the universe responds, and you start to have things show up. You have books show up, you have teachers show up, right? You even have experiences in your life occur that now when you look at the experience, you can see it's a teaching. It's a learning opportunity. It's not just something that happened, right? So when you open up your mind, when you become a beginner's mind, when you become open and receptive, everything and anything is teaching you. Everything and anything is teaching you. The past is teaching you. The possible futures are teaching you. What's going on around you is teaching you, if you're open, if you're awake, if you're looking for it. And then, you know, I think it is the case that a wisdom body begins to become part of your awareness. A wisdom body becomes part of your awareness. Some of the people that worked for Werner Erhard in the past that were S trainers or landmark forum leaders, as they got older, they left and became consultants and so forth. But they're out there developing new ways of teaching too, you know, and new ways of understanding the truth. So that's been interesting to watch. There are people around the world who have been looking for and developing what we need to learn and what we need to be able to generate in the world in order to start to change the direction that we're going in here. Otto Scharmer is another case, right? He's a senior lecturer from MIT. At one point, he had a book that showed up called The U Theory, that he's an economist, but he was looking at he was looking at it from a financial standpoint, but at the same thing, you know, because the economic situation is as bad as everything else, okay? And so he came up with this thing called the U theory, which was a unique approach to transforming humanity. And he wrote a book about it with some other colleagues from MIT. I saw the book, I read the book, I got excited about it, right? I sent Otto an email, just, you know, telling him that I really was excited about his work. He sent me an email back and asked me to come up to MIT.
Wow, did he really?
Yes, all expenses paid. To be part of a think tank from people around the world that he had gotten gotten funding for, and so we all met up at Cambridge at MIT, and people from Europe, people from Australia, people from all over the world came together up at MIT for a weekend. And we were talking about what needs to happen next. How does this thing evolve that they discovered, this U theory? It's a process that you can go through that can transform your experience and help you to live into a future. So it was an exciting time, you know, to meet him. You know, I mean, he's obviously one of the world leaders in new consciousness. But so there's another example of somebody that's doing this work, you know, and that showed up, and that was interesting. Then there was a guy out in California who was an ex-con from the federal prison system named Sherman, who claimed that he woke up in prison. You know, he was doing like, I don't know, long time in prison. And he had been a bomber, a militant bomber back in the 60s, where they were bombing power plants and stuff, and he ended up in federal prison for a long time. And in federal prison, he got involved in spirituality and had this awakening experience, right? And he eventually got out of prison and was living in California. And he came up with this direct way of looking at your true nature. He called it looking at yourself. Look at yourself. Just look at yourself. Which I thought was interesting. It was really based on Ramana Maharshi's idea of the inward looking, you know, and the self-inquiry process of asking who am I and so forth. But he developed a kind of a slightly different way to talk about that and a different approach, right? And so I started interacting with him, ended up in California with him, in Ojai, California. Spent some time with him. Learning from him and learning about people who claimed to be awake, because I was interested in whether he was really awake. You know, this guy was quite a character in terms of some of the stuff he did that ended him up in prison, right? So that was an interesting experience. But you see, what I'm talking about is these things just start to show up, right? Just start to happen. More recently, I came across the book by Peter Coyote that I mentioned, right? Peter Coyote, famous actor, right? Yeah. Zen teacher now, right? So I sent him an email, right? And then him and I started emailing back and forth about some new technique he has developed using masks to help people experience their consciousness. You know, he agreed to get together and help me learn about this technique that he had developed, right? So that's how it goes with people. And as far as I can tell, it's like anything else. It's like anything else. If you're committed to practicing meditation and learning about meditation, you're going to be paying more attention to anything that shows up around you about that, aren't you? Sure. You are. So that's how it goes. But the real answer to your question is that take whatever comes. Do you see what I'm saying? Trust the process. Trust the process. Take whatever comes. Start looking at what's going on around you as part of the education you're getting. Just that way of looking, you know, to start to intentionally and consciously pay attention to the occurrences in your life, right? The things that are occurring in your life, to start to pay attention to what's occurring in your life, whether we're talking about in your brain, in your mind, or in your world. But paying attention to that as a student, paying to that, attention to that with an open mind, with a beginner's mind, to constantly learn. What is this telling me? What is this teaching me? Because one of the things that happens with this process of practice and learning is that the way things occur for you changes as your consciousness changes. The way things occur for you. I have said here that the litmus test for an awake human being is the way they behave, right? That's the bottom line. What they say and how they behave is the litmus test, right? That'll eliminate a lot of people, right? But because that's real, that's the true litmus test, right? So what does it mean, the way they behave? Well, what determines the way they behave? This is very important, right? What determines the way you behave? What determines the way a human being behaves? This is one of the things that Werner Erhard taught me, right? And he came up with languaging this in a way that makes it accessible. What determines the way we behave is the way things occur to us. Mm-hmm. Isn't it?
Sure.
Yeah. Your actions as a human being are in a dance with the way things occur to you. They're in a dance. When Werner used to teach this and talk about it, he would pick up a water bottle and he would look at one of the people in the room and he would throw the water bottle at them. And of course they would go like this to catch it, and he'd say, you see, the way that occurred to the person determined the way they behaved. So that's a little example, right? But this is a very important thing to understand, because as your consciousness becomes more and more pure, right, and less contaminated with conditioning, right, what the effect that has is the way things are occurring for you is changing. The way you see people around you is changing. They're occurring differently to you. And when they occur differently to you, you behave differently to them. You see? That's how this works. So what you're really up to in these teachings and practices, right, is you want to have the way life occurs to you, the way you occur for yourself, the way other people occur for you, the way the world occurs for you, the way the news occurs for you, the way the past occurs for you. You want to keep paying attention and noticing that the way things are occurring for you is showing you how you're changing consciousness-wise. It's showing you that. Because when your consciousness is changing, what you're looking at looks different. This is so critical. This is so important, right? And if you understand this, and because you understand this, you're paying attention to how things are occurring for you, then you could really be onto something there, right? And not just in terms of things occurring for you in a transformed way, but also in terms of you're paying attention to the way things are occurring for you so you could see where you're stuck in your perception of certain people, or where you're stuck in your perception of certain experiences. You can say, oh, this is occurring to me like a very upsetting and disturbing incident, you see? So in that instance, the way it's occurring for me isn't transformed, but if I'm paying attention to the way it's occurring for me, I can use the way it's occurring for me to do some contemplation and some looking and some active transformation to see if I can change the way things occur to me. And you can change the way things occur to you, because when your consciousness changes, what that consciousness is aware of looks different. This is the whole thing. This is what is meant when they say the kingdom of heaven on earth, right? That's confusing to a lot of people, because they say, how can this mess we're in become the kingdom of heaven, right? But the answer to that is directly related to what I'm talking about. The way things occur for you changes. And what used to be hell occurs for you as a heaven. What used to be hell occurs for you as heaven, right? Now, for somebody who can't imagine how this could turn into heaven, right? That's not an easy thing to understand. That can be confusing, right? They can just say, I just don't get that. Same way that people say, I just don't get how everything could be predetermined, because if that's the case, the only possible God that could be causing this world to be the way it is has to be a nutcase. Right? Well, that's only because you don't understand God. That's all. That's only because we don't understand. If the way everything occurred for you and I was the way things occur for God, then we'd understand how things are the way they are, and it might be a kingdom of heaven. It might be a kingdom of heaven. I'll even hint to how that might be so, right? First things first, if you're going to take the way things are occurring in the world on face value to be what they are, so they're really that, right? If you're going to take things that way, then that's the end of it. It's bad. People are suffering. People are dying. There's all kinds of bad things happen. It's very bad, right? But if you look closer and if you evolve further, you begin to understand that the perception, the way things are occurring for you in terms of the way the world is, right, is an appearance. That's the hinge on which it changes. It's an appearance. It's not real. It's an appearance. An appearance is not real, right? Therefore, if it's an appearance and it's not real, there is not really any suffering occurring. If it's an appearance and it's not real, there is no real death happening. It's an appearance. Well, why would God have it appear to be that way? Why would God do that? To wake you up, right? Yeah. So you see, if that's the truth, what it means is, yeah, there's suffering, yeah, there's death. It appears that there is to scare your ass into meditation. It appears that there is to make you seek a way out, right? So you can wake up and evolve to the next level of your existence. And that's what happens for people that do evolve to the next level of existence because of their suffering, because of their seeking and looking for an answer and a way out. They come upon these teachings and practices, and if they commit to these teachings and practices sufficiently, they come out of the suffering. They start to wake up. They start to realize that it's possible to be happy, regardless of the circumstances. This is what the Dalai Lama is the model for. That's why he's smiling. He's smiling because he's demonstrating the possibility of being happy in this world, the way this world is. Because the understanding that he's informed by and the practices that he has done since a child has had his life be in the world of the truth. Do you understand? His life is in the world of the truth. So that's a very fortunate, I can't even imagine what it would be like to be raised in this truth as a child up until he's 87 now, still meditating, 2 hours a day in the morning. Right? So he's living a pure life. He's living a pure consciousness experience in which he sees things for what they are. He sees it as an appearance. But that doesn't mean that he just says, there's no real suffering, so don't worry about it. No, it's a real appearance. And the people who are living in that real appearance are really suffering because they don't know it's an appearance. Do you understand? So he can know it's an appearance and be happy and have a smile on his face, but he has compassion for people who are suffering because they're stuck in this delusion that they think is reality. Long answer to your question. All right, I think that's sufficient material for this gathering. All right, see you next time.